guys, and welcome to my third trimester overview. If you guys are newer here or don't follow me over on the social, we welcomed our baby boy into our lives 2 weeks ago on July 6th at 7:31 p.m. He weighed 10 pounds, 1 ounce, 21 inches long, Cullen Waylon Maxwell McDonald. So we're super excited about that. I had planned on filming my third trimester overview while I was still pregnant. But it just didn't happen that way, and to be honest, I'm kind of glad because now I can do like a full overview right up until the end, which is super exciting. So I have the questions here that you guys had submitted on Instagram for your third trimester questions that you wanted answered. A lot of them were relevant to birth, etc. So a lot of those were covered in our home birth vlog, which went through our plan for our home birth and all of our supplies, and then some of them will be answered in our birth vlog, which will be up later on this week, hopefully, with our birth story, etc. So yeah, questions that I got asked a lot was, do I go to a chiropractor to prep for birth, or did I go to pelvic floor therapy, etc. I've gotten those through a variety of my blogs. So I don't do, or I didn't do any form of treatment. I didn't go to a chiropractor or physio or anything, which if you're able to, I highly recommend. It's great. With COVID and everything, we haven't been going anywhere. Like, we've been avoiding anything that's not like essential. So that's one reason I didn't. Also, we don't have insurance, so it's just really expensive, and I didn't do it. I got a lot of questions regarding my pelvic floor, so if you're newer here, that I've talked a lot on here, or on my social in here, about pelvic floor issues. With Kennedy, who was our fourth baby, I had a ton of pregnancy issues, to be honest with you. It was just kind of a big fat mess. One of the biggest ones was my pelvic floor just truthfully tried to give out on me and was not happy anymore with having all these babies so close together. I also had a lot of pubic bone issues, and just to be honest, that whole area of my body was just kind of a big badass. So I definitely had issues this pregnancy with my pelvic floor and my pubic bone, but nothing like I did with Kennedy. So honestly, I look at it like, no, it was totally fine, I didn't have any issues, which isn't true compared to most people in their first or second pregnancies. I definitely had issues, but overall it was so much easier than my last one. My pelvic floor, truthfully, was pretty much fine my whole pregnancy. The last 3 to 4 weeks, I ended up going till 41 weeks on the dot. My last 3 to 4 weeks of my pregnancy, my pubic bone was like seriously suffering. The last 2 weeks in particular, I was finding it really challenging to walk. My babies drop super early. They sit right in my pelvis, like right in my pubic bone, like as low as they can go for quite a while. Cullen was in, like, literally head in my vagina basically for a good week and a half. So the last 2 weeks I was finding it really challenging to walk around without pain, basically. Sleeping was becoming super uncomfortable with my pubic bone, but overall, in comparison to Kennedy's pregnancy, it was so much easier. My body cooperated a lot better. My best guess is that Kennedy and Briley are 15 months apart, so my pregnancies were super close together, and I don't think my body does super great with that. This was a bit of a longer gap. I didn't get pregnant until Kennedy was 13 months old, so I think that just, my body was a lot happier with that. I'm assuming that's kind of my guess. So overall, definitely had pelvic floor issues, but again, not as bad as I expected to for a fifth, so that was great. Did I have really bad lightning crotch this pregnancy? Honestly, I can't really tell if it was lightning crotch or just my pubic bone being unhappy. Again, every pregnancy you have in your body is additional strain, and it gets harder on your body. So I mean, again, being a fifth baby, I definitely was having challenges with my body putting up with it. But again, I didn't find it a super hard pregnancy, so I think I did have lightning crotch on off throughout, but it wasn't super bad. Have you found your pregnancies get harder the older you get? So I don't know, because it's also my 5th pregnancy. So again, like I don't know how much of it has to do with age or whatever. I'm still pretty young. I'm only 27, so I don't know. Your pregnancies do, in theory, get harder every time. So my pregnancies, like my 5th, is definitely harder than my first was, in ways. But again, how much of that is age related, I couldn't tell you, because my favorite thing overall this pregnancy, I don't know, like in this pregnancy in particular, what I would say my favorite part was, I love being pregnant. Every pregnancy I find super enjoyable, even through the crappiness of it. I will say I was super excited. Yeah, I was like super excited about our home birth this pregnancy. So my whole pregnancy I was really excited about experiencing my home birth. Kennedy was also a home birth, but Kennedy was our first home birth. So I was super anxious about how I was going to go with Kenny. And so this time, for the majority of my pregnancy, I felt really excited and comfortable about my upcoming home birth. How was this 3rd trimester different from others? I mean, they all have been different in their own way. Like I said, this one was a lot more comfortable than Kennedy's, for example. So that was really nice. Like I was a lot more comfortable. I mean, this time COVID was a huge part, right? So normally in my 3rd trimester, I do a lot of stuff. Like I usually really like hiking when I'm pregnant, and only when I'm pregnant, let me tell you. I really like being active and doing stuff, and I like being kept busy and doing lots of physical activity that way, like lots of walks and stuff like that. And this time, because of COVID, we pretty much stayed home. So pro and con situation, I got a lot of rest this pregnancy. This 3rd trimester, I napped a lot. Like a lot of the time I told Jay I needed a break and I would go and have a nap, which I've never done in a pregnancy before, partially because I'm a busybody, and also because Jay was home this pregnancy, which was another thing that was different. But this 3rd trimester, it was super lovely. We got to experience a lot more of it together because we were together so often. But again, COVID kind of put a weird strain on that. But so I wasn't as physically active this 3rd trimester as I normally am. We went for lots of walks around here, but not quite the same thing. After experiencing this pregnancy, do you have any more thoughts on having more kids? We definitely want more kids. At least one more for sure. But I just kind of always answer that with, I have no idea. We could have 5 more kids. We could have 1 more and be done. We could have 2 more and be, I'm really not sure, but we most definitely still want to have at least 1 more. We plan on having at least 1 more at this point in time. Yeah, how's your anxiety with birth? So I've been talking a lot on my social media about how it seems the last 2 pregnancies, like Kennedy's and Cullen's, I started getting really anxious about birth. With my first, I think I was just blissfully ignorant and thought, oh, it'll be fine, we walk in the park, and didn't really like, yeah, I truthfully don't think I was actually anxious at all before I had Skylar, which was ignorance, to be honest with you. Mason, I don't remember being anxious before. Actually, yeah, I don't think I was anxious before. Mason's birth was super traumatic and rough for me. But for some reason with Bradley's birth, I felt totally fine working up to it. I think I may have been a little bit anxious about it, but like not a big deal. For some reason with Kennedy, I suddenly felt so anxious. And I didn't know if it was because it was my first home birth, but none of my anxieties that I could pick out were actually relevant to the home birth. They were all relevant to things like, I remember being really afraid that she was going to be in a really bad position. Mason, his birth was super messy because he was in a really garbage position. So I remember being really anxious that it was going to be a similar birth. I remember having anxieties with Kennedy about physically pushing her out, which is so strange because that's usually like the easiest part. So I had a lot of anxiety with her. Like I remember riddling anxiety, like not sleeping at night, so afraid of the birth. And then with Cullen, when I was 36 weeks pregnant, I had an episode where I bled quite a bit, and it looked like it was cervical, and so at that point in time they were not convinced I was going to make it to term, so I was in the hospital, and I remember Jay and I were walking into the hospital to register and got to the maternity ward, and I was standing there and I had this like instant panic attack, realizing I was like hella stuck. I was going to have a baby in the next like month, no matter what kind of thing, and I was so overwhelmed and instantly panicked by the idea of birth, and it stuck around. I can't even really pick out what it was. A lot of it was, well, okay, you know what, no. Some of it with Kennedy, I had a precipitous birth, so Kennedy's birth from first known contraction to her being physically out was, I believe on the chart, 53 minutes. So it was stupid fast. And so in Kennedy's birth, I had also the fetal ejection sensation. So when my water had ruptured and she essentially started coming out without me even doing anything, I had like a panic attack and got super overwhelmed and panicky about it. I was super anxious about having a birth that fast again, or possibly faster. I was anxious our birth photographer wouldn't make it, our midwives wouldn't make it, our doula wouldn't make it, we wouldn't be able to take our kids out, we didn't really want our kids present at the birth, so all of those things definitely added up into anxiety. But I don't really know what exactly was making me anxious. Like, I couldn't tell you plain and simple. I was anxious about this happening. It was like I was anxious about a quick birth for sure. I was anxious about it being like too much for me. Kennedy's birth was super short and super intense, and it was a lot on me. So I was anxious about that. I was anxious about it being crazy long. I was anxious about it being crazy short. I was just overall honestly anxious. I was anxious about pushing. I was anxious about contractions. It was just the whole thing I was really anxious about. It didn't really ease up. I again wouldn't say it as bad as Kennedy's, but it was very much a thing still. Yeah, is this baby still really active? So yeah, Cullen was crazy active. I don't know, you know, it's so hard, like I've had so many babies now, but looking back, it's really hard to like depict who is who in my brain, pregnancy wise, but he was definitely one of my most active babies. He and Mason, both of which were our largest babies, actually were he caused discomfort at the end with his movements. He would run his foot around this part, like just completely, like his ankle would run it against this part of my belly, and it would cause like actual pain. Jay would feel it and would be like, oh my God, like same with his elbow. I think it was his elbow. His movements were really sharp. And caused a lot of discomfort. I think I had talked about that in a previous vlog, that his movements were quite foreign to me. It was new to me, like I hadn't experienced a baby like this before. And he was like that through and through till the very end. He was super strong with his movements, super aggressive, I'm gonna say. But he was super active right until the end. Actually, even when I was in early labor, he was going quite nuts in there. Overall, how do you feel about this pregnancy? Honestly, this pregnancy was so, like looking back, it was so lovely, and probably one of my most favorite pregnancies. My first trimester for me was really rough compared to so many people. It was super easy. Still, some people are so sick and drained, and I wasn't. But I was the most sick in the beginning of his pregnancy compared to any other pregnancies. I was really tired. I also had really bad pregnancy congestion, which was super, super brutal. I remember actually saying, like, if I had this through another pregnancy, I'm pretty sure I'd be done, because I just couldn't do it, but it ended up lightening up. So I mean, it wasn't necessarily an easy pregnancy, but yeah, I feel like I enjoyed this pregnancy one of the most out of all of my pregnancies. My third trimester was definitely, up until like the very end, one of my easier. Usually my third trimester I have all kinds of weird issues, and I didn't have any really, beyond my iron, which was a huge issue. If you don't follow me on social, basically super last minute we discovered my ferritin levels were at like a death dangerous, like they were stupid low, and to the point where I actually had to go in for an iron infusion the day before my due date, and at that point in time they weren't sure if I was going to be able to go forward with a home birth, because of how late it was and how low my levels were, so that was quite the situation. but it ended up being fine. So overall, honestly, this was one of my most favorite pregnancies, I think. And like I said, mainly I think because of kind of my mindset. I was super invested in my pregnancy. I would say through like the second half on, I was really invested. I really tried to enjoy it and be present in it. So I'd say one of my most favorite. So I was asked, what do you think the sex of the baby is? And so I had said I would share this with you guys once the baby was actually born. So there's actually quite a story to this. So when I first was pregnant, I didn't actually have an inkling of what our baby was for quite a while. And then towards the end of my first trimester, beginning of my second trimester, I started having super strong feelings that the baby was a boy. And I was fairly convinced that he was a boy. And then more towards the mid-end of my second trimester, I flipped and I decided that I was pretty sure he was a girl. This pregnancy, second and third trimester, was really similar to Kennedy's. I was craving very similar things, and I just was pretty sure that it was a girl. I think mainly off of like just, oh, we've had 2 girls in a row, it's likely a girl, and because Jay and I both were really hoping for a boy. We really, at the end of the day, we didn't care what we had, but we really wanted another boy. So I kind of felt like it had to have been a girl. I don't know if that was just my way of maybe protecting my own feelings around it. I'm not sure. But anyways, I started having pretty strong feelings that he was a girl. But when I pictured having the baby, it was always a boy, quite adamantly always a boy. With Kennedy, we didn't find out the sex for Briley, Kennedy, and Cullen, and we don't find out the sex anymore. We did. I found out with Skylar, and we found out with Mason. With Briley, I was so positive she was a girl. I actually felt like I had been told already that she was a girl. With Kennedy, she was a pretty big surprise. We didn't, looking back, I flip-flopped a lot back and forth of what I thought she was, but whenever I pictured the baby, it was always a girl. So even when I thought that she was possibly a boy, when I pictured physically having the baby, for some reason I always pictured it being a girl. I think I have to learn to trust that instinct because I've always been right that way. So with Cullen, even when I thought he was a girl, I still pictured him as a boy for whatever reason. So I have to go see fetal maternal medicine every single pregnancy since Briley was diagnosed with congenital heart failure and congenital heart defect. We have to go every single time now. We go twice, and they do an intensive heart scan and overall scan of the baby. I have to go every single pregnancy now. So we had gone to fetal maternal medicine when I was 20 weeks and had our 20-week ultrasound there. And it was with a gentleman, like a male doctor, and he was really nice, and he asked us, do you want to know the sex of your baby? And we very firmly said, no, we do not want to know the sex of the baby. And it was funny because he kept saying to Jay, like, well, you know, I can tell you, and Jay kind of wanted to know, like, he was like, oh, maybe I want to know, and I was like, nope, very firmly, we don't want to know. So they didn't tell us, and we left. And so I had to come back at 32 weeks pregnant and have a follow-up scan. So I went at 32 weeks and I brought Jay, and I had extreme anxiety because during our 20-week ultrasound, they were saying that our baby was humongous, basically, and they were saying it looked like I had possible gestational diabetes, and the baby was like crazy huge, and the baby's stomach was measuring really, really large, and it was alarming. So I was super anxious about this follow-up ultrasound to see if his measurements had more balanced. So I was really anxious about it, and this was when COVID was pretty severe, and so I was super anxious that they weren't going to let Jay in for the ultrasound, because at that point in time they weren't really letting anyone in. But when they called me to confirm my appointment, they never told me you have to come alone or anything, so I kind of assumed it would be fine because it was a specialist, but when we got there, unfortunately, they told me no, he couldn't go in, he could only wait outside. So I was super upset and anxious, and so Jay was waiting outside for me to come out, and they told Jay they would try and get a picture of the baby. So we went in, it was a female doctor this time, I'd never met her before, and she took me in, and she instantly, within like a minute or two, asked, do you know the sex? And I said, no, I do not know the sex, and I very firmly do not want to know the sex. And she said, okay, no problem, can you look away? And I said, okay, so I kind of looked away, and she checked and confirmed and said, okay, yeah, you can look back, because she was checking the sex and confirming all that. So it's totally fine. We continued the rest of the ultrasound for about another 20 minutes or so. And she went to let me up, and then she said, oh, let me get a picture of the baby's face for Dad. And I said, okay. So I lay back down, and she was kind of fiddling around, and the hospital I was at, because it's a specialist, you like lie in a bed like here, and then on the wall facing you was a big TV screen where you could watch the ultrasound. So I was watching, and she was kind of like really digging around, and she said, oh, yeah, I can't really get a picture. His face is really buried in there. He really won't move. And she said he hissed 3 times through that conversation, and I froze and was just kind of like, and then she caught herself, and she said, oh, I haven't checked that yet. But she'd already, when I lay down, she had already instantly checked the sex and told me she was going to. So I was kind of stunned, and I just lay there and didn't really say anything. And she was like, oh, yeah, and she tried to back it up. She's like, oh, I actually have no clue. And then she's like, yeah, I can't really get a picture. And I basically ran out of there, and I started crying. I was so upset about it that she'd told me, like, just being honest. I was so devastated. And so I was walking out down the hall, and I was sitting there debating, do I tell Jay? Do I not tell Jay? I don't know what to do. So I got out there, and I was like really upset. And so we were like walking to the elevator to get out, and I don't know, I think he said something, and I couldn't help it. I was like, yeah, so she told me the sex of the baby. And he was like, what? And I told him, and he was really upset, and he was like, okay, we'll go back in there and get it confirmed then. He's like, I don't want to half know. He's like, I want to either know the sex of the baby, or I don't want to know the sex of the baby. And I just said, I was really upset. I just wanted to go. I was like, no, I don't want to. I don't want it confirmed. I don't want to know. So I left, and we were both really upset. And so we basically decided at that point in time that we were going to pretend it was an error. We were going to treat it like she just blurted out a random sex and she didn't actually know, and just continue to essentially pretend we didn't know what we were having. But essentially, surprise, we basically always knew that he was a boy. Not always, sorry, from 32 weeks on. It was really upsetting, mainly because then I started having anxiety because we really wanted a boy, and that's something I also wanted to address. I felt super weird on social media saying that I really wanted a boy, which I really don't like. It made me really uncomfortable that I didn't feel I could be really open and candid about that by saying, like, yeah, we really want a boy. It'd be great. Do we care if we have a girl? Absolutely not. I want another girl for sure. Like, I would love to have another girl in our family as well, and another boy. And like, it was not at all like we will be upset if we have a girl. That was not the case at all. But we wanted a boy for sure. And so I felt weird about saying how much I wanted a boy because, I don't know, I guess for when I was afraid of being judged, like I was going to be a shitty parent if I didn't want people, if we ended up having a girl, I didn't want people feeling like we didn't want a girl or we were unhappy, because that wouldn't have been the case at all. Sorry, as you can hear in the background, my kids are awake and giving Jay a hard time, so I gotta wrap this up. But I don't know, anyways, I just didn't feel entirely comfortable on social media saying that I was really hoping the baby was a boy in a way. Anyways, so when she slipped and told us accidentally that he's a boy, essentially, I had anxiety because, you know, I was afraid then if we ended up having a girl that I was going to have feelings about it. Like, I was going to have instant disappointment and be upset because I was, even though we went in it pretending we didn't know what we were having, we definitely were pretty sure we were having a boy. So I was really anxious about it. And also, like, Jay and I couldn't agree on a girl's name. And Jay wasn't really in a rush to find a girl's name that we mutually liked because he was pretty convinced we were having a boy. And that made me anxious, that he was going to have feelings if baby ended up being a girl, that my instant reaction was going to be disappointment or something, which honestly it probably would have been. It would have been, I think, strange if Cullen ended up being a girl, because we were anticipating a boy somewhere in the back of our heads. We were hoping he was a boy. I don't know. It was a weird situation all around. But I mean, to be honest, I kind of regret not being super honest about my feelings in that regard. I promised to be super honest and candid on here about all of that, and I didn't feel I could be that honest about, I really hope this is a boy. It doesn't matter to me, like, I will be just as happy if it's a girl, but if I'm being honest, I'm hoping it's a boy. So I regret that. I wish I was more honest and forthcoming about that. Also, I didn't not tell anyone because of that. That's not why we didn't tell anyone that we were accidentally told the sex for baby. We didn't because we were trying to pretend we didn't know. So if I had come on and said, oh my God, they told me this, it would have been, I mean, basically taking that for fact, and we were trying really hard not to. I told a super close group of friends of mine when I was leaving the ultrasound because I was devastated. So I messaged them and told them. My best friend, I told her that they told me, but I didn't tell her what they told me I was having, and thank God for her. My best friend Charlie didn't ask, and I was so grateful for that she didn't ask, can I know? She didn't cry. It was just like, she was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry that happened, that's awful, and she didn't cry, and I'm very grateful for that, because I wanted to pretend it didn't happen. So going forward, any future ultrasounds I have, I 100% will be wearing earphones. I don't even care how rude that appears, because that was so disappointing for me to find out. So yeah, anyways, long story, but to answer, what did I think the baby was? We ended up kind of knowing what the baby was, but I bounced back and forth quite a few times. It started as I was fairly sure he was a boy. Then it was I thought he was a girl, but I still was picturing a boy at the end of the day, and then we accidentally were told. Towards the very end, when we were like literally waiting for him to come, I actually kind of completely second guessed and were like, no, I think it's a girl. I do think it's a girl. What that was, who knows? That could have been me just preparing myself for potentially being a girl. It could have been, I don't know. But anyways, that was long and short of it. So yeah, I think that kind of overall explains everything for my third trimester. Overall, it was a really lovely pregnancy. I am super grateful to not be pregnant anymore and to have him here. At the same time, I already really miss it. So yeah, we will see when we have our next pregnancy. But thank you so much for joining us, and or me, I guess just me here. I'm really tired. But thanks for coming on and watching, guys, and I will see you soon.